So recently I was sent an article from the Wall Street Journal where they listed what they thought were the 10 best cities for remote workers to relocate to and, I don't know, call a realtor, I guess. They based their findings on things like internet price, internet speed, proximity to the airport, and home prices. They even had the number of parks, restaurants, and art venues for some reason. Those are all great. Not sure why they included the art venue thing and not a lot of other things, but okay. I thought I would sort of review their list and expand on what they had and see if these really are the best cities for remote workers. The first thing I did notice was a few of these cities have those programs that will pay remote workers to relocate there. They didn't even mention them. One of the only companies I do sponsored videos for is called MakeMyMove.com. This is a website that'll help you find and get these offers if you're a remote worker, which is a sweet deal. But one interesting fact I did find from the Wall Street Journal article was fully remote workers make up about 13% of working Americans right now, or it's about 25 million individuals. This was according to a study done at Stanford University. In today's video, we will look at the Wall Street Journal list, add some things to it, and find out which ones have those offers for you to move and get some cash just to move. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Fort Wayne, Indiana is one of my favorite Indiana cities. They have decent crime numbers, and the Wall Street Journal pointed out that 100% of the homes get at least 100 Mbps internet, with a monthly price of about $39.70. Fort Wayne, Indiana has a really low cost of living, and the typical home price there is about $281,000. Those are all not bad. Fort Wayne doesn't have a really high crime rate. Their violent crime rate is 34% lower than the national average, but their property crime's a little bit higher. It's 7% above. That's nothing. Now, there wasn't anything in Fort Wayne itself as far as an offer to move there, but one of its suburbs, New Haven, Indiana, does have a very attractive offer if you want to move there. First of all, you get $5,000 just to relocate, and you get to have bourbon and burgers with the mayor. They have a few other incentives that go with that one, but I think that's pretty cool. Bourbon and burgers with the mayor. Number 9, Wichita, Kansas. Wichita, Kansas has 100% of their homes able to get 100 Mbps, which is a plus. Their internet's a little more expensive. It's about $50 for that. And the Wall Street Journal claims that their homes typically go for around $286,000. That's your typical 2-3 bedroom house type thing. Wichita does have a very low cost of living, which is always good. So I think Wichita's a solid choice for number 9. I would have gone with Topeka myself. Topeka has cheaper internet. Houses are just a touch more expensive. Their cost of living is actually a little bit lower in Topeka than Wichita. And Topeka has a lower crime rates, just a little bit lower. Topeka also has one of those offers. I also like Topeka's offer, $10,000 just to move to Topeka and $1,000 Jimmy John's credit. That being said, Wichita, yeah, I could see them fitting at number 9 because they're cheap, they have the right speed internet, and if you called a realtor today, they'd probably pick up the phone and be eager to talk to you. Number 8, St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis, Missouri, 100% of the homes get at least 100 Mbps, which is good. Now, where they really shine is their homes are less than 190,000 typically. You can go above that with any city or any state or any town, but we're talking the averages here. And according to the Wall Street Journal, the typical home here goes for $184,000. St. Louis cost of living is pretty decent for a major city. It's actually 15% lower than the national average, and housing is 34% below the national average. St. Louis does have some problems. Now, we all understand that. We've heard about their crime issues and stuff like that. They're getting better. Now, it's not great, but it is getting better. 2 years ago, their total crime rate was almost 300% above the national average. Right now, it's about 190% above the national average. And I get it, that's a horrible number, but it's just showing progress. Number 7, Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas, actually. The Wall Street Journal thinks this is a fine place to live. Again, 100% of the people there have at least 100 Mbps internet, which is always good. They say the typical home here goes for about $191,000. Their median's a little bit lower than that, and their average, I'm showing in other places, say it's right around $198,000. When you look at the Kansas City, Kansas part, their cost of living is pretty low. It shows that it is 18% below below the national average. Their housing is 41% below the national average. If you look at the Kansas City, Missouri side of things, it's 12% below the national average, and their housing is 22% below the national average. Both sides have a good amount of crime, both around 150% above the national average. I did forget to mention that their internet on average goes for about $40 a month. That's not a bad rate. I used to have Comcast here in Oregon, and it was like $125 a month. I was getting a gig or whatever, but it was $125 a month. I switched to another company. Now I'm paying $56 a month, and it's faster. Overall, I think this is a good choice. Kansas City's a decent place to live. Myself, again, I would take Topeka. Topeka's just west of Kansas City, but overall, Kansas City's not that bad in both states. If you do move there as a remote worker, just make sure you know which neighborhoods suck and which ones don't. They have a lot of really safe places, but they also have a lot of really ugly neighborhoods that got some crime. Number 6, Huntington, West Virginia. Huntington, West Virginia is a solid place to live if you want to save some money. So they got that one right. That goes for all of West Virginia. 100% of the homes get at least 100 Mbps, and the average rate for internet is about $33. Not bad. Everything's cheaper here. If you want to buy a home, it's only $148,000. That's what the Wall Street Journal is reporting. That's fair. That's about what I've seen at other places too. 150, 155,000, pretty close. I think they could be lower on this list on cost alone. I've been pushing for quite some time to get people to move to West Virginia if you're a remote worker. They don't have a lot of really high-paying jobs, but if you could move to that state and bring a job with you, all the better. If you're surviving in, let's say, New York City or Northern Virginia, working remotely, you could live like a king just about any place in West Virginia. Now, Huntington doesn't have any offers for remote workers, but plenty of places in West Virginia do. Lewisburg, Morgantown, Charleston, Greenbrier Valley, offering up to $20,000 just to move there. Number 5, Lafayette, Indiana. We've talked about Lafayette, Indiana before. Every time I've talked about remote working, they always pop up. If you don't know where to find Lafayette, Indiana, it is in between Chicago and Indianapolis, a little closer to Indianapolis. And this is not a bad place to live. Of course, they get 100 Mbps, 100% of the homes, and that goes for about $41 a month. Homes here, though, are a little expensive compared to other ones on this list. The Wall Street Journal says the average home here goes for $318,000. That's still below the national average, which right now is about $360,000. I would have put this city a little higher on the list, maybe number 3 or 2, something like that. But 5's still a good showing. They have a great offer if you're a remote worker. You get up to $5,000 relocation money, you have access to Purdue's library, and a continued education discount. Purdue's right there, so it only makes sense. There's a couple other things you get, including 10% off moving and storage with pods. That's always good. But yeah, Lafayette's not a bad place to live. Number 4, Conway, Arkansas. Surprise, surprise, Arkansas actually shows up on one of these lists. In a lot of ways, it makes sense because Arkansas is extremely inexpensive. Almost every place you go in that state, the cost of living is going to be at least 20% below the national average. Conway's cost of living is pretty low. Their housing's pretty low. They got a little bit of crime. Nothing like Pine Bluff or Little Rock. I mean, Conway's only got a crime rate that's 30% above the national average. You take a look at Pine Bluff, and their crime rate's 238% above the national average. Their violent crime rate is 433% above the national average. There were towns in France on D-Day that had less violence than Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Little Rock's not much better, 217% above the national average for total crime, and their violent crime rate is 432% above the national average. Conway is like an oasis. There are no offers to get you to move there. There are some in Northwest Arkansas. You can get almost $11,000 to move to Fayetteville, Arkansas. Now, I should mention, when these offers come through, there's usually some kind of stipulations like you must be at least 24 years old with 2 years work experience. You must have full-time work, either remote or by yourself, and you currently live outside of Arkansas. That's the rules for the one in Fayetteville. Each one has something like that. That's what's really cool about the MakeMyMove.com website. They tell you all that stuff. Number 3, Evansville, Indiana. Evansville, Indiana sits on the Ohio River, not too far from Owensboro, Kentucky, and about an hour west of Santa Claus, Indiana. Yeah, it's a real place. The Wall Street Journal said that 100% of the homes have 100 Mbps. I looked it up and they're only covered, unless they're using like Starlink or something like that. I looked it up and all I could find was about 85% of the homes have 100 Mbps or higher. Now the good news about living here, besides Evansville's kind of an alright place to live, their homes are going for less than $200,000. The Wall Street Journal says that the average home goes for about $183,000. That's not bad. They have some crime, it's not terrible. Their cost of living is extremely low and they have plenty of things to do. They're also offering a package that's worth about $6,100 just to move there. $5,000 is in cash. In case you haven't noticed, Indiana's doing a hard push to get people to move there. And all these little towns in the different counties, like Henry County, Crawfordsville, Noblesville, White County, Perry County, Terre Haute, all these places in Indiana are offering money to get you to move there if you're a remote worker. It only makes sense. I've said this before. From a city standpoint, you're moving people into the town that pay taxes, that go to the restaurants, go to the stores. They put money into the local economy, and they're not taking up a job somebody else could take up. It's a win-win. In my opinion, I think Evansville is about where it should be, maybe 2 or 3. So I think that's a pretty good choice by the Wall Street Journal. Number 2, Joplin, Missouri. Joplin, Missouri. We finally get to Missouri. I mean, sure, we talked about St. Louis earlier, and St. Louis is in Missouri, but St. Louis is almost like its own place. That's how I've always looked at it. Kind of like New York. New York is part of New York State, but it's really its own place. Joplin, Missouri is right near the tri-state marker. The tri-state marker is where Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma meet, all in a little huddle there. Like they all got together to start rumors about Arkansas. And that's the marker right there. That is the point where all 3 states meet. It is not that exciting. It's a bunch of rocks down a dirt road. Here's Four Corners, where Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, and Colorado meet. Serious drop-off in quality and enthusiasm, if you ask me, for the tri-state marker. But Joplin, Missouri is not a bad place to live. 100% of the people do get at least 100 Mbps of internet. The typical home, the Wall Street Journal says, goes for about $203,000. I looked it up, pretty close. As far as their cost of living goes, it is extremely cheap to live here. Their cost of living is 17% lower than the national average, and housing's 34% lower. Their crime rate is a little high. Their total crime rate is 213% above the national average, and their violent crime rate isn't terrible. It's only 37% above the national average. Like I said, there are cities in this country that are like 400% above the national average, so 37 is not that bad in the grand scheme of things. But there was no incentives to move to Joplin, Missouri. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget, if this is something you're looking for and you're looking for a place to move, you're a remote worker and you'd like to get a little cash in the deal and you're not sure where you want to go, check out MakeMyMove.com. You might walk away with $20,000 worth cash and incentives just to move. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Springfield, Missouri. Springfield, Missouri is not too far east of Joplin, Missouri. About an hour and 15 minutes, maybe a little bit less. Springfield is the 3rd largest city in Missouri, and it has a metro area of almost 500,000 people, so it's not the biggest town. And in case you're wondering, yes, it was named after Springfield, Massachusetts. When immigrants came this way, they named it after their town. Wall Street Journal says 100% of the homes in Springfield get at least 100 Mbps of internet. The typical price for that's about $32, and the typical home here goes for about $308,000, which is the 2nd highest on this list. And I'm not sure why. I mean, they got a low cost of living, great. They got internet and plenty of things to do. They also have a pretty high crime rate. The overall crime rate is 254% higher than the national average, and their violent crime rate is 305% above the national average. That's pretty high. I definitely wouldn't have put Springfield, Missouri as the number 1 spot on this list, but the Wall Street Journal saw it differently. There are no incentives to move here for remote workers. That is unfortunate. All right, that's today's video. Want to thank MakeMyMove.com for sponsoring my videos and for having such a cool website that I can get information from. There's a link for them down below. All right, everyone, have a great day. Be nice to each other.